Okay, let's talk about Ayurveda. You've probably seen this word popping up everywhere, right? On wellness blogs and health food stores. It's this ancient 3,000-year-old system for holistic health, and it is absolutely booming right now. But here's the thing. As it gets more and more popular, it's also coming under some really intense scrutiny. So let's dive in and see what's really going on.
So what's the big appeal? Well, it's pretty simple. It's seen as natural. And for a lot of us, our brains just automatically connect natural with safe. But is that always true? Is it really that simple? That's the core question we're going to tackle today. We're going to dig into both the ancient wisdom and the modern warnings that surround this practice.
All right, first up, ancient wisdom, modern wellness. To really get this, we have to start with why Ayurveda is so compelling in the first place. You know, it's not just a list of herbs you can take. It's this whole philosophy of life and health that's been around for literally thousands of years. So let's take a look at what that actually means.
So at its heart, Ayurveda is all about one thing: balance. The idea, which comes from ancient texts like the Charaka Samhita, is that our bodies are run by these three vital energies, or doshas. You've got Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. You can kind of think of them as these unique blends of elements that make you, well, you. The theory goes that when you get sick, it's because these doshas are out of whack. So the whole goal of treatment, using specific herbs, changing your diet, tweaking your lifestyle, is to get that harmony back. It's a really personalized, holistic way of looking at health.
Okay, but this is where things get complicated. What happens when this ancient philosophy crashes into modern science? Well, critics point to one really big problem, what they call the evidence gap. And this slide really gets to the core of the whole debate. It's like two totally different ways of looking at the world. On one side, you have Ayurvedic principles. Critics like Dr. Abby Phillips, you might know him as the Liver Doc online, point out that this is all based on ancient texts, philosophical ideas. You know, things like doshas. You can't exactly put a dosha under a microscope. Then on the other side, you have the scientific method. This is all about things you can test, randomized controlled trials, stuff you can replicate and even prove wrong. And in modern medicine, if a treatment doesn't hold up in those trials, it just doesn't get the green light.
And listen, this isn't just a couple of critics saying this. We're talking about major health institutions. The National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, the NCCIH, put it pretty bluntly. They're saying that while sure, some Ayurvedic stuff might look promising in small studies for minor issues, there's just not the hard scientific evidence to back up the really big claims, like curing cancer or heart disease.
So, the evidence debate is one thing, but then there's another concern that's frankly a lot more urgent, and that's the question of safety. Okay, get ready for this number, 20%. A huge study in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, found that 1 out of every 5 Ayurvedic products sold in the U.S. had toxic levels of heavy metals. We're talking lead, mercury, and arsenic. And these are not just trace amounts. We're talking about levels that can cause serious long-term damage.
And it's not just contamination from things that shouldn't be in there. The research points out that some of the herbs themselves, herbs that are central to Ayurveda, can have their own risks. For example, Galoy has been linked to liver damage. And what about ashwagandha? Super popular for stress, right? Well, it has a compound in it, withanolide A, that some studies show can actually damage the DNA in your liver cells. And some of the liquid formulas, the asavas and arishtas, can have up to 12% alcohol. That's a real risk for liver injury right there.
And this is where it gets really real. This quote from Dr. Phillips, the liver doc, just hits home. He's saying that he and his team are seeing patients, real people, coming in with serious liver injuries, and they're getting it from taking super popular, easy-to-buy supplements like ashwagandha. It's just a powerful, kind of scary reminder that just because something is natural doesn't automatically mean it's safe.
So, you might be wondering, if there are all these known risks, why is this stuff still so incredibly popular? Well, that brings us to our next point. The massive, and I mean massive, commercial industry that's built up around Ayurveda, an industry where sometimes the marketing claims get way, way ahead of the actual science.
And a prime example of this is the whole controversy around the company Patanjali. Just look at this timeline. It starts back in 2021 when they claimed their Coronel kit could straight up cure COVID-19. That led to a ban pretty quick. Fast forward to 2024, and India's Supreme Court slaps the founders with a fine for misleading ads. Then in 2025, it gets even more serious. Warrants are issued over false ads about curing things like diabetes. And that same year, another court bans one of their ads for calling their competitors frauds. This whole saga just perfectly captures that clash between big business, big claims, and modern regulation.
So, does it have to be this big fight between old versus new? Not necessarily. The sources actually suggest there could be a path forward, a way for science and tradition to meet in the middle. Let's see what that could look like.
Okay, this is a really important distinction, so let's break it down. The key idea here is not to confuse two totally different things. On one side, you have the idea of just accepting the entire philosophical system, doshas, ancient texts, the whole thing, without any modern proof. But on the other side, you have the idea of using all that traditional knowledge as a jumping-off point, like a clue, to investigate specific plants for compounds that might actually work. See the difference? One is about belief, the other is about scientific discovery.
So how would that actually work? Well, a lot of modern medicine has started with clues from traditional practices, but it follows a really strict process. Step 1 is to observe. You see a plant used in traditional medicine that seems to have an effect. Then, step 2, you isolate. Scientists go in and they find and extract the specific active ingredient that's doing the work. Step 3 is the big one. You test it. That single compound goes through intense clinical trials to make sure it's safe and that it actually works. And finally, step 4, if it passes all those tests, it gets approved. It becomes a standardized, evidence-based medicine. So you see, tradition can give us the hint, but science has to provide the proof.
Which really brings us to the final and maybe most important question of all. In a world that's so hungry for natural wellness, how do we find that balance between honoring ancient wisdom and demanding modern evidence? How do we take the best parts of traditional knowledge while also making sure we're protected by the safety and standards of science? You know, there's no easy answer here, but just asking these questions, that's probably the most important first step we can all take for our own health.